All right, we're going to continue with some GarageBands, and this is the third in the series, part 3. I'm going to review a few things and then go over some more advanced techniques as well. So, just to kind of get started with GarageBand, once I open it up, I can hit the little eyeball here, and on here is all the loops and samples and whatnot. So, the way I usually start off is to make a beat. So I click on a beat, and I can audition it. Click on it again and I'll stop auditioning it. Click on another one, audition it. Now there's two types of loops that we have here. The ones that have the little blue on it, that's an actual sample. The ones that are green, those are MIDI files. And again, what is MIDI?
Data.
It's data. And what type of specific data is it? Performance data. So that means all it's recording is I hold down a C for this long, I hold down a chord for this long, it's basically a piano roll. So with that, because it's data, I can change the sound of it. I can make it longer. I can make the rhythms longer, shorter. I make it louder and softer. All that data I can change. On a loop, I'm basically kind of more static with that. I can't really do as much editing with an audio file as I can with a MIDI file. And that's one reason why MIDI, even though MIDI was made in, you guys remember what year MIDI was made? Range?
82.
82. And how long is that now? We're in 2006.
It's 24 years.
Wow, you guys do simple math. That's awesome. Yeah, so that's not quite a generation yet. And MIDI will probably be around for another 10, 20 years just because it's so useful of ability to go through and edit music and whatnot. So let's talk about how to edit some of these beats and samples and whatnot like that. First off, I'll start with a MIDI file, and I'll just drag it up here, and that's how we get the files up here. Then I'm going to click on the little scissor part of it as well. Let me get rid of this. I didn't want that one there. And this kind of, I don't think I've went over this in the previous one. So click on a track over here, and it's kind of hard to hear. It's highlighted. Hit track. I can say delete track, and that's how you delete a track. Okay, so it's easy as that. Up here, I can add a new track if I want to. I can duplicate a track if I want to. So that's kind of a feature that I haven't went over yet. So click on the little scissors here, and basically this is the editing tool. And out to the side over here, I have the ability where I can drag to make the zoom level in and out. And when it's like this, it's really hard to grab a hold of something. But if I zoom in, okay, well I can see these areas here. In a lot of ways, I kind of make my matrix joke. You know, there's a redhead, there's a blonde, there's a brunette over there. After a while, you kind of see the code. You can say, well, this is a loud part, this is a soft part. And after a while, you can see snare drums. You can see other things as well on there. And to do some basic editing in here, I can highlight a section, and if I double click on below this line here, it basically separates that. So I can take that part out, and I can just come up here, hit delete, and get rid of that. So that makes life pretty easy if you need to edit a specific file. Mainly what I use this for is making something that's too short or taking out, like I talked about last time, taking out break beats every once in a while. So if you got a 12 measure loop, 16 measure loop, every once in a while take out one beat just for fun, and maybe have another beat on below it, or a shaker or something else to kind of get some contrast going on, so you just won't get bored hearing the same beat over and over again. And that's the problem with a lot of these loop-based programs like Fruity Loops and Acid and whatnot like that. People use the stock loops, which sounds cool, which sounds a lot better than probably the loops that most people make. If everybody's using that same loop, though, if you just change one or two little things in it, it's going to make it sound a lot more fresh and a lot more less out of the can, if you if you would say. And once I do that, I can actually bring it over, and that way, if I wanted to drop a beat and say, well, I don't really want to, I want to cut this to be a shorter beat for whatever reason, I can do that. That's the main editing parts that you can do with a loop in GarageBand. Of course, if I were to take this file out to another program, I can do some other things to it, and we'll talk about that probably next week on the last part of the advanced techniques of how to use GarageBand. So, and as long as I use these lines here to measure up where the beats are at, these little separations here, it's not. It's going to be, and GarageBand helps you basically see, grab those parts pretty well together. All right. And again, if I want to get rid of the track, I just click on the track up here over the very top, say delete track, and the track is gone. All right. So let's do a let me do the loop thing. All right, so once it's up here in the green, up here, see how that's green? That tells me that's a Midi file. That's a Midi file. So I click on that, hit the little arrow again. See how it's totally different than it was before? This looks a little bit more familiar. Does this sort of remind you of something that we've seen already? What? Yeah, and what was that thing? What was that specifically? You remember what it was called in Performer? Well, at least what I called it. I call it the piano roll because you can see the notes and the durations and whatnot like that. So I can go through and edit stuff. And just like in Performer, just like in any sequencer, because GarageBand is a sequencer, well, I can click on a note and say, all right, and you hear it. I get a touch louder. Make sure that's on the drums because that's where it was. Now we'll get the percussion sound. Can you hear how some of them are louder and softer? And you can see the velocity of it change. So like one of these, it says 78. That one's 108 here. So if that was too loud, well, I could change the velocity to make it softer. And when you think about percussion, and we talked about this before in the sequencing part, is that the drummers play the same volume on everything they hit. No, they don't. They don't. So you want to change that up, and that's how you get that feel. If you throw in some weird accents, I won't say weird, but if you throw in some accents occasionally in there, it can take the same 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I'm just using that, but I put a little accent weird in. Same rhythm, but by accent it changes it up totally. The dynamics of it is totally different. And if you think of all the different gradations of velocity that we can have on there, we can do a lot of really neat things with just changing the velocity. Just changing the velocity. Okay, the other thing that we can do is I can click on that and say, all right, I don't want that sound. I want that sound. And because this is a hi-hat sound, I can get a whole section of it and highlight it. Basically, I'm just highlighting what I want. And I say, okay, now we just drag it up. Say I want that sound. So that way I can take this loop and go through and edit it in a different manner. Let me go back and put those down where they were. All right. So let's do this for fun. I got the loop up. I got this loop up here. Let me loop it twice. All right. So I looped it, and again I do that by going to 50% and higher. It's going to be a loop. 50% and lower is going to make it smaller. All right, so I'm going to come to measure 5, and let's say the first time around, I want to have the hi-hat be that. And let's say the next time, and I'm going to make this smaller so I can get a whole bunch of these at the same time. I'm going to highlight all those hi-hats parts. Oh, okay. All right. I just realized something again. That this is actually what I need to do is just the opposite of that, because this is a mirror image of what's looped. Let me do this. I'll show you the way that I need to do it. Click on that. I'm gonna hold down Option. That makes a copy of that beat there. Okay. So now I got separate beats where I can go through there and highlight the individual parts. So I just got reminded of something live on camera. And one neat thing about teaching these classes is that I don't expect everybody to memorize every little fact about things and whatnot. But just like a word processor, if I were to take you on one word processor, if you know how to use one word processor really well, if you go on another one, I bet you could figure out where the copy and paste is at and the spell check's at, right? I mean, those type of things you can figure out. Well, even on the sequencer, well, once you've seen this before, well, you know, and there's like 100 different types of sequencers out there. If you see a piano roll, well, you bet, well, somehow I probably can move a note up and down, or I can make it smaller, or I can erase it by clicking on it. So it's the same principles, and that's what I worry about more, is that if you understand the concepts of this, you can go into Pro Tools and do similar things to Pro Tools or Cubase or Cakewalk or whatever, Sonar, whatever they have, whatever sequencer that you get. All right, so now the second time I'm going to that's a different sound. So the first time, we'll go one measure into that. So that changed it up a little bit by changing the hi-hat part on there. The other thing that I often like to do is, if something's really complicated, a lot of stuff going on at the same time, well, go through and make it a little bit less complicated. Now let me take out this part here. So I'm going to highlight all that stuff, and I'm just going to hit delete. Bam, it's gone. So let's listen to hear a contrast with that. And so that's something that's always nice to do, is that when you have a lot of stuff, when your cup runneth over, pour out some of the cup. That way you don't have it running overflowing too much. And my analogy of the taco, how much salsa, how much sour cream, how much pepper do you want in your taco? A little bit, a whole lot. You know, you put too much sour cream on it, you put a bucket of sour cream on your taco, you can't taste your taco no more. So sometimes less is a lot more, and I really find that in the creative process, if you have too many loops to pick from, you have too many things to pick from, you often just get so overwhelmed that you can't do anything with it. So that's the thing I always remember. And a lot of times I try to put myself into, okay, I'm only going to use this type of sound today. I'm going to use this type of thing today. And does anybody else find their creativity is fostered by restricting what you do? You know, if you're a writer, try not to put "and" in your writing, or "if" or "I." Try to do that. Try to talk about "I." That's cool. And then another aspect on here, I can look at it notes-wise. If you can read notes, for percussion, it's not as handy to look at, but for like if I was a piano part, I could do that as well. Any questions on that? How to go through and edit either the Midi files or the loop file? I mean, or the WAV files, and why you would do those type of things? Good. because I do have the software instruments, software instrument here, I'll go ahead and put like a sync on it just for fun. And else is we'll have that. Close that down. So I got strings going on. And because I got this hooked up, the keyboard hooked up via MIDI, let me just play something in. And kind of like if I go into control and say count in, it's going to give me one measure for nothing. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got, it actually writes out the notes as I'm playing them in. And I tell you, back in '89, when I first saw that, I was really blown away with it, and it's still kind of amazing to see it do that. It works a lot faster now than it used to do back then, so that's kind of a nice thing. Just like I did before, because this is MIDI data, and again, what's MIDI data again?
Performance data.
It's performance data, and that means I can do what to it? I can edit it. One of the simple ways to edit it is I can just double click on and just change the patch to something else. Let's change it to an organ sound. Or piano sound. So I can go through there and change the sound, and that's probably the easiest way of going through and changing the timbre, changing the tone color of a particular track, just by going and changing that. Because it is notes, I can click on a note there and say, all right, I really don't want that note. I wanted that note. So I can just go through there and move that just like before. I can come through here and change the quantization. Remember we talked about quantizing before? Well, it was quantizing. It was quantizing as best. It was showing us. It was aligning everything to the coordinate. I went through there and I changed it up where that was what I was actually playing there, or not anywhere close to the beat on there. And I can go through and say, oh, let's line everything to the 8th note. Or let's line everything to a whole note. Piano roll on there as well, so I can say, all right, so I want that note to be longer. I can do that if I wanted to, or say, hey, that note's going over that note there, well, I can make that note shorter. I just tap on it and drag the duration, and depending on what I have it aligned to, right now, and it's under this little arrow thing, which is really kind of inconvenient. But if I say, all right, line everything on quarter notes, the lowest thing I can make is a quarter note. I'm lining it, when I move something, it's going to move everything in this chord on its own. So if I want to move it any way that I want to move it, I have to put it down really low. So I got 64 gradations I can move around now. Okay. All right. Any questions about that? And again, if you have the version 2 and version 3, there's going to be a typewriter on here, and you can use the keyboard of the computer to play, and which is kind of neat. And again, I can do some of the really cool things. I can change the octaves on the fly. If I don't have a MIDI keyboard to carry around with me, I can just use the typewriter keyboard of the computer to come through and play melodies as well. All right. Any questions on that? None? All right, good. Now you may say, all right, I like all the samples in GarageBand. Well, I want to use something I want to use some samples for myself. So basically what I'm going to do, I'll take my CD that I have, CD that won't get played on radio. Apparently there's no market for it. That's all right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rip the CD, and what does that mean? Okay, I'm going to take the data that's off the CD, which is what they call Red Book compliant CD, and I'm going to take that information, because like when you put a CD in there, you can't just take it off and say, all right, like if it's a data CD, you can just take data off of it and drag it to your hard drive. You can't just drag an audio file and drag it to your hard drive and have it do anything. I actually have to convert it to where the CD can be read, the information on the CD can be read on the computer. And that process is called ripping it. Actually, this should find it. I think I should have this in the database. There it is. Yeah, cool. I typed all that junk in and uploaded it to the CD database. So that way I can have all my song names on there as well. So let me find one. I think that was an instrumental one. That way you don't have to hear me sing. Okay. So let's say I like that track there. I want to use that. I want to use part of that as a sample in my particular piece. Well, with iTunes, I'm just going to say, all right, let me convert this section to MP3. And before I do that, importing, what I usually do is the default's the AAC encoder, which is a really good encoder. And we'll talk more about how encoders work and whatnot. Yeah. But you do, if you want to have no loss, you can hit either. Well, on Mac, I usually use AIF encoding. On PC, I use Wave. Both of them are almost exactly the same. There's not a whole bunch of There's not much of a difference between either one of those files. But if I want to have something exactly that was on the CD, and I'll do that today, I'll just encode this as with no compression. So I'm going to say, all right, got that highlighted. I'm going to say convert to AIF. Give it a second to spin up. And there it is. And I hit my library. And there it is at the top there. And now I can drag this onto a hard drive, onto the desktop, and I have right there. And if I go into GarageBand, I can just drag that audio file into GarageBand, just like that. So here it is. It's an audio file now. So that means any way that you can get files that you want. There are a lot of free loops on the internet that you can find, and you can import them into GarageBand just like that. So they have CDs that you can purchase. They have basically like royalty-free samples and loops and whatnot, and you can drag them and add them to your GarageBand piece just like that. And let's say that I'll show you how to do some simple editing with this. Well, this is too long. This is a 3-minute piece. Well, I don't want that. Hit the little arrow again. I mean, hit the little scissors again. Now, let's say I just wanted the first couple of seconds of this for my sample. And, okay.
So this is completely taken off of the CD, or is it like a copy of it?
This is a copy. This is a copy that was on the CD. This is what they call ripping the audio file to your CD. I mean, to the computer. So it's still on your CD. It's not erased from your CD. It's making a copy of that. All right. So I highlight that first little part there. Double click on it. And if I want, I can move that out of the way. And that let's listen to this little. Let's say that's all I wanted. There. Okay. There's a little bit of a blip on there. Let's see if I can get. There we go. All right. And now I can loop that over and over and over and over again. And if I wanted that particular sound for that. So that works with anything that you'd have that you would want to sample. So you could find some drum beats or a bass line or whatever, and that's how you. That's basically how you can sample today, which is so much more easier than it was 10 years ago sampling. I have a sampler that I bought that had, what was it? 8 seconds of sample time. It was a big keyboard. 8 samples of sample time. And that means I had 8 seconds of sample time. So I was like using quarter seconds for this here and looping that forever. And you get some artifacts going on and whatnot like that. So you get what I call the Munchkin effect, where it gets really high, and then the artifacts wow 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 sound at the bottom. And if you listen to some of the recordings in the '80s, you can kind of hear that on some of the recordings they had, because that was the sampling technology they had back then. Okay. Any questions on how to do that? How to pull in audio files? Basically, you get the audio file, and you just drag it into. I'll do one more just for fun. Some of this in iTunes. Let's see. And then I'll just drag that into GarageBand. I like to have stuff on the desktop so I can see where it's at. I can't remember what this was. So there it is, easy as that. And then I go through there and edit it out. And I can do the same thing with the other parts of that as well. Is that I say, okay, well that's cool. All right, let me get rid of this first part here. And I don't want that. Double click on it, and then I can get rid of that. And now I can make some loops out of this. So forth. Or you made this one time, and then all you do is just click on it and say Option and drag it to where you want to put it. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. Well, we'll do some more next time.